Any of you dads opened up a Father's Day card yet? Do you save that for later? Anybody opened up a card? Nobody? Okay, a couple of you did. Thank you. Most of the cards that I get for Father's Day kind of, ramble off a list of things that my kids are happy about, me doing or appreciate me doing. And that's fine. If you get that Father's card today, I hope you enjoy it. I hope it means a lot to you. But I wanted us to start our day not with the things that maybe those cards are filled with, the things that we do. I want to ask the question, scripturally speaking, what are the things that fathers should do? I'm going to limit your lists to 3, okay? And you're going to get a chance to kind of talk in your row if you want or however. But come up with your list of 3 things that a father should do if he's going to be a God-honoring father. Go ahead, talk about it to each other. There's obviously more than 3 things that a father should do. Who had grilling? Did anybody have grilling? Maybe that's in your future this afternoon, guys. All right, time's up. There's no absolute right answers for this. I'm just going to share with you the 3 things that I came up with. If you had something similar to them, great minds think alike. Here we go. The first thing that I think a father should do for his family is protect. Protect. Dad's the guy you stand behind when you're a little kid when things get dicey. His are the legs that you grab in scary situations. Anybody remember doing that? Or if you're a dad, remember having that done to you? I'm the guy in my house who has the 2-iron under his bed, okay? It's on my side of the bed. I am the designated go find out what that noise was guy. I was sitting with my son Ben last week at a lunch with him, and he reminded me of a story. I'd forgotten all about it. We heard a noise in our house. He was the one who heard it, and so he comes and gets me. Eleanor nudges me, and Ben, tucked in behind me as I walk through our house with my iPhone flashlight and this golf club in my hand. Some of you are like, they have guns, Mark. I know, we're working on it. But anyway, but this is what I was holding, and he remembers with, great joy this moment of my, protective power as a dad. I don't recall it as much, but dads could and should protect. Another thing a father should do, you're going to see they're all P's. I went to seminary. I have to make everything start with the same letter. But protect and then provide. Did anybody have something like provide? Yeah, and maybe most of you went to what people mostly think when they think about provision. Go to work, pay the bills, right? Make sure that everything's covered there. I think provision goes way beyond the monetary, right? When it comes to a father's should in life. We should be a provider in whatever needs providing, available for whatever. Whether that's to coach the baseball team or to chauffeur to those games wherever they're needed, to be the grill master. I already mentioned that one. To be the tea party guest and to put on, the funny hats and drink fake tea. Any grandparents doing that and grandfathers doing that with their grandbabies now? Or getting pinned at wrestling. This was one of my kids' favorites when I was a kid. They just, they never lost a match. Every bout we ever had, Dad got pinned. And I needed to be available for those things. Eleanor tells me about her dad. She had still has a great father, but growing up, he was just lights out. He just was a provider in all kinds of ways. Went to work every day, came home, and then every night, her family members would go off to do what they would do, and she would sit down at her kitchen table to do her studies, to do her homework. And she knew that maybe her mom would be too busy with the things that she's going on. Certainly her brother and sister weren't going to be interested. But if she went down to her dad's shop, or where he just went almost every night after dinner, and said, "Hey, Dad, can you help me with my times tables?" Her dad would just stop everything. And everything else in life ceased. And he just went upstairs, and as long as she needed him, he was there. Dads were given to families to protect and to provide. Certainly other things, but those 2 I think we can count. Kind of as we get going this morning, We can ask ourselves as fathers, am I a good protector of my family? Probably, in general. But am I a good provider? Even now, I'm looking at some of us, we're older. Hi, olders. And our kids have kids. And we still have this responsibility to those family members, those that we love, to be providers for them. Wherever God might have us provide. Am I providing for my family, for my kids and their kids? Could I provide for them more? These are great questions to ask. Okay, the last one's the one I want to talk about. It's a P word. Anybody want to guess? I tested David this morning as we were doing the slides. He said provolone, and I was like, that doesn't even make sense, Dave. You're weird, and that's going to come up at your review. Anyway, no, provolone. Anybody say one? I didn't hear you. Anybody say one? Oh, praise a good one. I didn't have that one, but it's kind of included in the one I'm about to say. Anybody else? Pepper? What? Doesn't matter. Pastor. Anybody have that one on their bingo card? Pastor. Yeah, dads should be all about protection and provision. But you may not know this. If you're a Christ follower, you're the lead pastor of your home, Dad. At the church of whatever your last name is, you're the pastor. Now, if you are married to a woman that is, parenting those kids with you, she's the co-pastor, not leaving her out. But dads, you're the pastor. When I say pastor, some of you might think, well, do I need to install a stage and a pulpit and, gather my family for services once a week? Is that what it's going to take? I'm going to have to learn how to preach? No, I'm not saying that. Settle down. When you read pastor or hear pastor in conversation, I don't know if you think of me. I hope maybe you do, but I don't want you to just limit it to me and my role. A pastor is a shepherd. That's what the word means in Greek. It means to be a shepherd. Your flock is your kids. They're the lambs that God entrusted to you. And so as a parent, as a father, or as a mother, it's your spiritual privilege to guide and shape and nourish those that God has entrusted to you. So that might beg this next question. What does a father need to do to pastor his family effectively? I came up with 3 things. They're not going to appear on your screens, but the first one is teach. I think that's a huge part of being a shepherd is to, show the way. Teach what's right and what's wrong and help people or your kids understand what's best for them, how God would honor them. Speak the truth. Speak might be a good thing for some of us dads. Open your mouth. Say some stuff and teach your family, no matter where they are in life, what God needs and hopes for them. But if you're going to teach that stuff, you better live that stuff. Amen? Anybody got me with that? Yeah, more is caught than is taught, dads, if you didn't know that. So if you say a bunch of stuff and your life completely, goes 180 on what you say and doesn't reflect the things that you're saying, you got a problem there. So certainly teach what God needs us to teach and live how God needs us to live. But this is the big one that I'm continuing to learn as a father, is that we need to, as pastors of our flock, our family, we need to love no matter what. Anybody in the love no matter what stage? We're always in that stage to some level. Kids aren't perfect, neither are parents. The kids aren't perfect. They're in process. They're learning, right? And what keeps us in the ring, keeps us in the fray on those days where we're like pulling our hair out and just wondering how this is going to turn out? It's love. It's the thing that keeps our Heavenly Father in life with us. Did you know that? God loves you perfectly, always, never stops. It's a stupid movie that Andy Samberg was in. Never Stop, Never Stopping. It's a dumb title. But that's what I picture when I think about the love of a father for his child. Certainly our Heavenly Father's love for us, he never stops, never stopping. And our love for our kids, dads, needs to be persistent, consistent, unyielding. No matter what they do, no matter what we prefer they were. I find that this has been the most challenging stage of parenting for me with this one. Adult kids are tough because you can't ground them. You can't just send them to their room, right? You got there's nothing here. You just kind of like, hey, I wouldn't do that. Okay, all right, go ahead, all right. And you're called to certainly teach and to live by God's standards, but to love like God loves. Now, these are the things. Well, if teaching's a major part of us being dads, the question I want to answer with the rest of our time this morning is this one. What does God want fathers to teach their kids? What does God want fathers to teach their kids? Now, he's provided a whole book of principles. Anybody got like an actual Bible, an analog Bible? Hold it up for me just so people can remember what it looks like. There's one. Yeah, there they are. 66 great books within a book. It's a library of God's principles and truths for you as a father to learn yourself, live yourself, and pass on to your kiddos. Dig in. Have fun. Guess what? I'm not going to be able to cover the whole of the Bible today. So is everybody okay if I just take a little itty bit? Yeah. Turn in your Bibles with me to Proverbs chapter 3. I started reading Proverbs in college. If you don't know my testimony, grew up in a pastor's house, kind of went bonkers in high school. Someone is calling me right now. That's my daughter. She just figured out I'm preaching. All right. So I come online with Jesus as a sophomore in college. I'm going to a Bible school, which is pretty ironic if you really think about it. But I'd kind of been a Christian by, family involvement and reputation, but not truly one in my heart. It can happen. Maybe it's happening with you right now. If it is, please shift into a real life with Christ and not just this fake, phony thing that you can have and too many people settle for. But I was a sophomore in college when Jesus became real to me, and I started reading my Bible. I still have it. It's in my office, and I read it on a daily basis. And in that Bible are all the vestiges, the remnants of that first 2 or 3 months of my online experience with Jesus. And I got a colored pencil set from somewhere, and I just started, not like coloring or drawing pictures, but I just started underlining everything. And Proverbs is one of those books for me. I just dug into Proverbs. That's where God sent me. And I didn't know this about Proverbs when I started studying it as a sophomore in college. It's a letter from a dad to his sons. Solomon writes Proverbs as an email, probably bigger than that, but a letter to his kids. It's a lot about wisdom and all that stuff, but it's in the framework of a father teaching his sons. In chapter 2, verse 1, it says, hey, make sure that you pay attention to my teachings and your mother's teachings. He includes the mothers. So everybody who thinks I'm not a father, I got nothing today. Moms, I'm talking about you. You're the co-pastor of your family. Stay in there in the things that we're about to study. Anybody in here a child of someone else? That was a softball. I was hoping you were going to get that one. Yeah, these are instructions to kids, and every one of us is someone's kid, even if they're not here anymore. And so these are all things that we need to adapt. So if you're not a father and you're not a mother, but you are a kid, it's for all of us. But I'm going to take us to Proverbs chapter 3, verse 1. And we're just going to watch as Solomon writes a letter to his son. It starts like this, verse 1. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace, they will add to you. Experience has taught me that most of my life's failures come when I either ignore or forget what I've been told to do. Anybody testify on that one? Yeah. It's usually not lack of information that gets us in trouble. It's either our willful disobedience to what we've been told or our just neglect and inability to recall what we've been told. Does anybody remember those times as a kid where your dad says, all right, listen, bud, we're doing this project. I need you to go to the garage. I need X, Y, and Z, right? I need the screwdriver. I need the measuring tape, whatever it was, right? And so you're like, okay, Dad, X, Y, and Z. And you go from wherever it was in the house to the garage. And on the way, the TV was on and the score was tied. And you're like, squirrel. And then you go into the kitchen and your mom's baking cookies. And you're like, oh, those are squirrel. And then you finally get to the garage and you've had 2 experiences between the instructions. And you're standing in the garage as a 9-year-old and you're like, I know I'm supposed to be here. I just can't remember what it was I was in here to get. Now, my life has taught me that as I age, that's even more frequent. But Solomon says this to his son. He says, hey, don't forget. Implores him, don't forget. If you remember what I tell you, you can get to the good stuff in life. Reminds me of passwords. Anybody got a password on a couple websites? Anybody been locked out of that website after 3 attempts? because you just couldn't remember your password? Isn't that frustrating? You're shut down. You can't do what you were about to do because you couldn't remember what you were supposed to remember. And so much of life is that way. If you could just remember what you're supposed to be doing, it would unlock that door. It would allow you to enter into that, whatever it is that you're hoping to enter into. Remembering and keeping the teaching of a good father, it says here, leads to a longer and more peace-filled life. The length of days and years of life and peace will be added to you. That word peace is shalom. Shalom is this like homeostasis. You remember that from science class? Everything's working. It's this like good life. And so if you can just remember the stuff I'm saying, good life awaits. Now this is where I picture Solomon being like, right on, Dad. I'm right there with you. But can maybe you give me a little refresher? Just a quick rundown of the teachings that are maybe most important, because that's what Solomon does next. He understands that we're all, susceptible for forgetting what we're supposed to do, and so he obliges. And over the next 10 verses or so, we're only going to get to about 8 of them, but he gives 4 foundational things. We're going to do 3 that go into life, a good life, if his kid can just remember to prioritize them for himself. The first one's this. Solomon tells his son in so many words, prioritize inner character over outward behavior. Can you say that one with me? Prioritize inner character over outward behavior. I love how he starts the list of reminders. He starts with life on the inside. Solomon understands that life emanates from in here. It's from root to fruit. Just like a seed goes in the ground and all of a sudden whatever that seed was pops out on the top of it. Fruit follows root. It all starts on the inside in your character. That will, if you put that in right places, then the behavior will follow. Look at says in verse 3, let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. The word for steadfast love there is hesed. It's the most common word for love in the Bible. It's the word most often used for God's love in the Old Testament. When we get to the New Testament, we get agape, which is super cool. But hesed is kind of the Old Testament version of New Testament agape. Hesed is this word, like it's translated, that means steadfast love. It means unshakable, immovable, that kind of love that I was talking about as we were listing off the things that a dad should be. He should be loving his kids no matter what. That's hesed kind of love. It's God's love. But faithfulness is the next word that he says, don't let these things be forsaken. It's the Hebrew word emet. And it can be translated lots of ways, firmness, faithfulness, but they all regard truth. So basically you got 2 things here that Solomon says to his kids to do first. Remember these above all. Don't let these things be forsaken by you. Make sure they're in the mix of everything that you are and do. Love and truth, faithfulness to the truth. Who's heard me talk about that before? Those are the 2 legs that life should stand on. God's love, God's truth. A balance in both. You can't fly over here into God's love and forget his truth. You can't fly over here into God's truth and forget his love. Both matter and both are built within a person. Solomon says, never let go of God's steadfast love and his faithful truth. These matter most in life, in every part of life. Go to your family, go to school, kids, go to work, moms and dads. As you grow older, they'll matter in your marriages. If you're not married yet, they'll matter in your parenting. Love and truth, foundational to a good life lived with God. This is how he describes them. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. This is used often in Deuteronomy 6. Hebrew parents were told after Moses gave the law to write them, write their laws, the law of God on their doorposts and to tie them like a necklace around their neck. It kind of brings up this picture. Anybody got a locket of a picture of someone in a locket that you sometimes wear in memory of maybe a loved one that's passed? You wear a locket with a picture on it because it's that picture close to your heart. It's supposed to be a symbol of that. And you can also pop it open as a reminder. But I think the Hebrews had a different idea. The Jewish people saw the neck as like the seat of life. And if you think about it, it kind of is, right? Anybody breathing right now? Yeah, you're breathing through these parts, right? Your mouth and your nose, and where's it going? Through your neck into your lungs, right? Anybody going to eat later? Yeah, where are you going to put the food? You're going to kind of try to jam it in the back of your knee? You're going to put it back there, Wade? I know you like doing that. No, you're going to put it in your mouth, right? And you're going to chew it, and where's your food going to go? Through your neck to your stomach, right? Okay, what the Jews were saying, hey man, this is life. Just like your neck is the passage of life for your very existence. Love and truth. Bind them around this neck, this all of life flowing through neck. All of life should flow through love and truth. He says, write them on the tablet of your heart. We're not talking iPads here. We're talking more stone. Remember Moses come down from the mountain, and what's he got on the stone after he comes down? He's got the 10 what? The 10 commandments, right? And how did those get put on the stone? Anybody remember? Yeah, God etched them on the stone. That's how we got the 10 commandments. But that's what he's talking about when he says tablet. He's talking about like this permanent etching. When it comes to love and truth, I want those permanently etched on your heart. And I want them to be like the gateway of everything that you do in life. They're like the strainer that gives you the beans and lets out the nasty bean juice. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Anybody got one of these spoons at home? It's the only one I could find. I was going to use a colander, but we couldn't find one of those. So we're going bean strainer spoon. Yeah. Now, what we're trying to do here is as we ingrain ourselves, as Solomon helps his son understand what matters most, it's love and truth. Let everything else flow through those and be left with those two things alone. See, Solomon's more concerned with his son's character than he is with his behavior. Is that you, dads? Is that you, moms? Sometimes we can skip right past character and just shoot for behaviors, right? And I understand that. We think we're doing both. But sometimes we're not. Anybody grow up in that house where it was more important to look good than to be good? I grew up in a pastor's house, Angry Baptist Church. We were kind of in a fishbowl. And so I wore a three-piece suit from the time I was in third grade. That's why I don't like wearing suits. Some of you are like, he doesn't like wearing suits. I hate wearing suits. It's like, I need to see a counselor. Eileen, I'll make an appointment. Anyway, but I had to wear a three-piece suit, not because Dad thought it was like holy or anything like that. He just thought it would be impressive to everybody that his 8-year-old was wearing a three-piece suit going to church. It made zero sense. Don't put your kids in three-piece suits. It makes zero sense. But, at times, my dad would be more concerned with appearances than he was with developing my character, right? Now, that should not be. Appearances matter. I'm not saying that they don't, but what should matter most is what we're instilling inside the hearts of our children. Teach your kids to love, that love and truth matter most in life. Teach your kids that love and truth matter most in life. So if you do, you're going to see in all of these, there's a benefit, a blessing that comes in not forsaking love and truth. It says in verse 4 that you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. When we build our lives on character, on the things that matter most, like love and truth, it's going to just imminently turn into success in the eyes of God and man. Help your kids be like Jesus. Some of you are like, I am trying to do that. Did you know that Jesus is reported in your scriptures as someone who grew in wisdom and then received the favor of God and man? Luke chapter 2, verse 52. It's one of the only verses that we have from the childhood of Jesus. We see him showing up at the temple, and he and his mom have this conversation after he's lost for a couple days. But as a kind of a summary, Luke adds this to his gospel. He says, Jesus increased in, say it with me, wisdom. He understood what mattered most, even as he grew, which is kind of hard for us to understand because he's all God and he's all man, but he had to learn, and he stubbed his toe and all this stuff. But he increased in wisdom and in stature. He grew physically. But when he increased in wisdom, what did it produce? Favor. With who? With God and with man. Let's piggyback on what Solomon's telling his kids. If you're going to be a good father, prioritize inner character over outward behavior. The second thing he's going to teach us here is the familiar part. Anybody hear Proverbs 3 and you're like, I know that one? You're going to know the next verses probably. Solomon's going to teach his sons to trust God's wisdom and not their own. And here comes the familiar verses. Ready? Say them with me. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. I'm going to keep going. And do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Or make straight your paths, it says in the ESV. Let's go back to the beginning of verse 5. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. And some dads are like, doing it. All of my kids believe in Jesus. Not what it says. Everybody understands that believing in Jesus is way different from trusting in Jesus. Everybody gets that, right? Now, lots of people believe in Jesus. Very few people truly trust in Jesus. They don't trust in their Lord. They believe he's real. They'll accept that, he's in charge. But when it comes to life and the things of it, they're like, I got it. I'll do this. Trusting means placing your whole self in the hands of someone. All your heart kind of intones that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Entirely, exclusively, your trust is to be in God. Teach your kids that. Trust in God with everything you got. It's what you did when you came in this morning. So you're like, I did? Yeah. You looked at the chair, every one of you, and you're like, looks like it can hold me, right? You probably believed this is going to be okay if I sit down. But then you did. And by sitting down, you went from belief to trust. And that's what it is, to trust in the Lord. It goes from, having this mental, concept of who he is to really living in him, for him, with him. The most important part of these verses hadn't really popped out to me until I started studying this week. The most important part of this verse is the next line. The next line says this, and do not lean on your own understanding. It's going to show on your screen. And there it is right there. And do not lean on your own understanding. All right. Once we kind of figure out that trust is a belief, trust is really, all my heart, everything in God, I sit down with him in life. What the warning is don't get up. Don't stand up from the chair that is God and you're trusting him. Stay there. Why? Because if you start heading off in the things that you think are great, we're all in trouble. Isn't that true? Yeah, if you're unfamiliar with the story of the Bible, the first 3 chapters have this first instance of this. The first children of God, Adam and Eve, were doing great at obeying God and the things that he said, trusting in him, taking him at his word, not crossing the lines. And then his enemy, a guy named Satan, slithers into the garden and says, really? And I'm not going to detail it all for you, but the first instance of trusting in yourself happens at the first sin. That's how this mess got started and how it perpetuates in everybody's life in here. We lean on our own understanding. So Solomon says, hey, son, don't trust yourself to sort out the big stuff of life. Learn from God and let him lead you through it. Even if everything in you is like, no, I know better. I know a better way. I'll take a shortcut. No, he's like, hey, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Don't lean on your own understanding. I was having lunch recently with a young guy I've only met a couple times, and he was talking about his upbringing in the church, and he just started detailing for me all the things that he thinks about God. And I kept, as he'd share with me, idea after idea, I'd be like, where'd you get that one from? And where'd you get that one from? Excuse me. And what kind of came out was he was just making this stuff up on his own. Like, feels good to me. This is what I call it and was taught to understand as folk theology, all right? Folk art, it's like, hey, it's art to me, right? Folk theology is, hey, this is what I think about God, and that's truth according to who? Me. But God gave us his truth. He gave us his word so that we could understand him from him and be able to trust him as he wants us to trust him, right? We don't make this stuff up on our own. I keep hammering that to my kids who are kind of away from God right now. My son Ben called me this past week. I'm going to go have lunch with him after we're done. And he's got normal problems, even though he's not following Jesus. He had some stuff going on in a relationship that he's in, and he got really fired up about it. And I was like, hey, bro, first of all, you need Jesus. That's how every one of our conversations starts, just so you know. I said that, right, babe? I said that. I was like, first of all, you really need Jesus. And he's like, yeah, I know. But then I said, but listen, here's what he would say. And I just detailed for my kid what the Word says about his life. And I held that up for him. And at the end of it, he says, yeah, you're right. And I was like, not me. I'm just telling you what God's Word says. You need Jesus. Solomon continues in verse 6. He says, in all your ways acknowledge him. All of your heart. Now we've got all of your ways. No half-seas, no partial investment. You got to be all in all the time. Constantly aware. I woke up this morning, started driving here a little bit after 4:30, and I noticed, thankfully, on the way out that Eleanor's car, which is normally positioned kind of this side of our garage, she had gotten a bunch of stuff. She had been out yesterday, and so she had her car moved over. I pray nobody in here has ever just backed out and hit another car that you weren't looking at. But I saw it, and so I'm like, good. But it still provided a challenge. I had to be able to veer past her car, miss the side of our garage, right? And then Cooper's car is right over there. And then there's a big oak tree right over here. Now, who's grateful for that reverse camera? Whoever came up with that engineer needs a raise. Who's with me on that, right? And so I got this reverse camera, and I'm like, I'm groggy. I can barely see. There's no lights back there. But I'm just kind of trying to keep those little orange lines away from the side of the garage and the side of the car. And here's what I didn't do. Because what am I going to do? If I'm not paying attention, I'm hitting everything, right? And this is what God's saying through Solomon to his kids. Pay attention in all of your ways, at all times, in all things. Look out for the other cars in the oak tree. Acknowledge him. And then, this is the promise, he will make straight your paths. Yeah, I'm a huge golf fan. I'm watching them play this week at the U.S. Open. It's in up near Pittsburgh at a golf course called Oakmont. That doesn't matter. But it's one of the toughest golf challenges that any player will ever face. They grew, I don't know if you can appreciate this, but they grew the grass up in what's called the rough. It's on the fairways, the really short stuff. The rough is on the edges. They grew the grass up to 6 inches. And it's just impossible for these, even the very best players in the world, to get their ball out of it at times. It's just, and so the whole goal, whoever wins this tournament, they're going to be the one probably who put their ball in the fairway the most, the short grass. For golfers, we all understand how important that is. Find the short grass. It's this picture that God has given us. Hey, if you can just, in all your ways, acknowledge me, I'll make your path straight. Then every golf hole has its challenges in and of itself. Finding the short grass is not a guarantee of a good score. Golfers testify? Anybody? But you have a better chance at a good score if you find yourself there. Some of you are like, I don't get golf. Okay, white lines. Anybody drive a car? Where are you trying to keep your car? Between the white lines, not the one that is defining your lane and the one that is defining the ground or the dirt on the side. Keep it in between there. Are there going to be potholes every once in a while between those white lines? Yeah, you're going to go through some rough spots, especially if you're driving in Uganda, by the way. That is just a mess over there. But is the basic goal to stay here? Yeah, it is. And if we can trust God, he'll keep us between the white lines. He'll make our path straight. He puts it this way. I'll pick it up a little here. Be not wise in your own eyes. He says, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. In a second way, he says, hey, don't trust yourself. Don't settle for your own wisdoms. He says, fear the Lord. And as you fear the Lord, turn away from evil. Fear the Lord is one of the most common phrases in the book of Proverbs. We hear it first in chapter 1, verse 7. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Fear doesn't mean terror. Certainly it is right to have a healthy respect for God. But it's not what is meant here. It doesn't mean terror. It means reverence and deference, yielding oneself to God. How do we grow in our fear and reverence for God? It's by knowing and applying his word, reading the manual and figuring out what the manual says about the troubleshooting issues you find. This is a manual for my Wi-Fi speaker that I found on my desk. And it has like a troubleshooting section. If you can't get your phone to sync up with your Bluetooth speaker, here's how you do it. We have that in our Bibles. We learn the fear of the Lord by reading what the Lord has revealed about himself in his word. And what happens when our kids know and revere God? Verse 8, it will be healing This is what Solomon says to his son. It will be healing to your your flesh and refreshment to your bones. I love that word flesh there. It's translated that way in the English Standard Version. It actually means navel, your gut, your belly. Yeah. He says, if you can just keep this thing between the white lines and honor me, this will be a refreshment to your bones, your belly. Anybody hangry right now? Who's hangry? Anybody hangry? If you've ever gotten hangry, you understand what refreshment can do. Anybody been around someone who's hangry? What are you like? You're like my son Cooper, he's pretty regimented in life, and he'll forget to eat, and he's acting like a tool, and I'll be like, bro, have you eaten? And he'll be like, no, I haven't. And we'll throw something in him. A Snickers bar is what the commercials always say, so they can stop acting like a diva. But once he gets some stuff in him, once he gets some food in him, right? Is he okay after that? And is he usually apologetic for being the tool that he was being? Yeah. Well, this is what God is saying. Hey, man, you hangry at life? Trust in the Lord. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and it'll be refreshment for your bones. It'll be food, spiritual food, for your hangry belly. The last thing's this. It'll go quick. We need to prioritize inner character over outward behavior. We need to trust God's wisdom, not our own. These are the things we teach our kids. The third one was really interesting to me, and I just got to mention it real fast. You need to be generous with what God gives you. Look what it says. In the same list that includes your inner character and your trust of God comes this financial discipline of being generous. Look, it says, verse 9, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce, and then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. Darnish is going to come. We're going to sing our last song, but let me just close with this. I find this so intriguing that one of the key things that a father, Solomon, wants to teach his kid is what to do with what God gives him. And sure, listen, some of you guys are whiz-bang with money. You're really great at talking to your kids about that. I didn't grow up with a father like that. Thankfully, Eleanor did. Eleanor grew up budgeting by the time she was like 8 years old, and she brought a lot of her great habits into our relationship, and we've benefited from the things her dad taught her, right? And so if you're a dad and you're like, really helping your kids out financially to prepare for the future and save and, have a budget and all, it's great. But Solomon doesn't do any of that with his kids. He just says, hey, kids, remember that everything you have comes from the God who gave it to you. And the first fruits of everything you have need to be given back to him. First fruits means first fruits. It means you give to God first. And look at me. This isn't a brag. This isn't a pat on the shoulder. But to my memory, to my knowledge, Eleanor and I, in 33 years of being married, have never missed giving as a part of our monthly experience, okay? We have put off paying some bills, credit cards that, kind of compounded in their interest, only twice in our history of that by grace of God, but we've put off other things. But even if we didn't have any other money, it's just been ingrained in her, and she helped me understand it, early on in our marriage, and now it's ingrained in me. We're giving because God has given to us. I'm so grateful for the many of you who have understood that, but a lot of people, especially a lot of dads sometimes, it's just not a priority for them. And it's something that Solomon took out a chunk of his letter to mention and make priority for his kid. It's like, hey, bud, yeah, man, love, truth, build everything on those. Absolutely trust the Lord and not yourself with everything you got. But don't forget this, be generous, be a giver. Oh, hey dads, that's what you go home and tell your kids today. Those things. You do those things, as you teach those things, you should be living those things. Everybody remember that? If you're gonna teach this stuff, you better be doing it. Because it ain't gonna make any sense to your kids if you tell them to be generous and you're not. It's not gonna make any sense to your kids if you tell them to trust the Lord and you don't. It's not going to make any sense to your kids if you prioritize for them love and truth and you don't abide by either. You do both. And in all these things, we understand who God's made us to be. As fathers, as mothers, as kids. He's made us to be submitted to him as our heavenly Father. And so we come to the Father. Everybody stand with us as we sing.